Shola Fagogisi is the Executive Director of One Life Initiative for Human Development, Ibadan, Nigeria, a non-governmental organization working to improve the well-being of young people by providing safe spaces, skills, linkages, and vocational training, including information and resources to enable them make informed decisions. He holds a master's degree in development communication and is currently in line for a PhD in public policy. He has served as consultant to UNICEF Nigeria, the Global Media Campaign to End FGM, IFDC, ICRA, ICRA, and a number of international and local non-profit organizations. Shola also holds a certificate in non-profit leadership and management from the Lagos Business School. Through his organization, he works around themes of sexual and reproductive health rights, governance and policies, and enterprise development with interest in agri-business. He tweets us at Shola Fago. We're excited to have you around, Mr. Shola. Thank you for making time to train our participants this morning. You can unmute yourself and begin your session right away. Mr. Shola, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I can hear you clearly now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm trying to fix my screen sharing here, but I'm having some issues with it. I'm having some issues with that happening. So in the meantime, if you don't mind, while I try to solve that, I could just, if you could share the presentation from your own end, just indulge me to do that.
Okay. Yes, you can share.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. Thanks for doing this. I hope I can fix this problem subsequently. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. So my brief this afternoon is to share with us how we can actually leverage technology to promote good governance. What exactly are those things we can do when it comes to technology? It's the 21st century, several tools that we now have. And then we're talking about good governance, and we really can understand this in the context of several things happening in the country. There are conversations now about ethnic identity. There are conversations about security. There are various conversations about the quality of leaders we have as well. So how do we use this invariably to expand the breadth and length of that of this conversation in a way that ultimately we can say that, look, we are beginning to use technology to actually promote governance. How do we use technology for electoral purpose? And my interest here, more importantly, is what can you do at your own level? So let's not even talk about at the federal, at the state, but in your own personal space. what is it that you can do to actually help bring about some of these changes? Next slide. Okay, so my presentation I will talk about the concept of governance, just to re-echo and help us understand what this means. I would also talk about the new trends in technology. What are those things that we really need to know? What does the space even look at now? To amplify these, I'll share with us a number of data around this. Why do we need to talk about digital technology? Why does it count? And then I'll show how to use various digital technology tools that can aid, good governance. I'll talk about it introductorily, briefly. I know I have another session on, on storytelling, because ultimately that is part of the thing you want to do, part of the several things you want to use these platforms for. Next slide. Okay, so very, very precisely, governance itself is a very broad concept. Okay, so ideally, we're talking about ways through which a country is actually governed. We're talking about economic frameworks. We're talking about regulatory policies. We're talking about macro policies. We're talking about micro policy. We're talking about the various interactions between various sectors. And that's why, for example, you have various ministries. You have departments, you have agencies, and all of this works together. So when the entire COVID-19 thing came, several of us did not know that there was even a body called the NCDC, right? But now the NCDC is playing a major role. So the question is, would Nigeria have thrived without a group like the NCDC, right? Several of us did not know about groups like the Nigeria Intelligence Agency until we started having several security challenges also, as as a country and as a people. So my point here is that the interaction between several of these agencies of governance, how well they interact, how several of these platforms are, geared together, is what brings us to talk about how governance works. But we don't just want governance to work. That's not the interest of any citizen anywhere in the world. It's about how does governance work in a way that would profit me. I was having a conversation this morning with a taxi driver, and he was saying, that look, I like this politician because this politician comes around to distribute a lot of money. And we're trying to make him see the point that, look, it is not in distributing money. He says that once a politician comes into town, he goes into every hospital, would, pay their medical bills, would knock on people's door one after the other, that the way we are here now, if we happen on him, he will just give us money. And his argument was that that is the only way to reach everybody, right? But the other part of the conversation was saying that, look, if he fixes the road from where we were coming from to where we are, you would drive on the road, you would have less engagement with your mechanic. If I'm trekking on that same road as well, I would be able to trek and not have to go back and start repairing my shoes because the road is bad. The man who has a facility on the road, who has a store by the road, will likely have better patronage because more people will use that road. So governance is about, that process of decision making, and ensuring that those decisions, those processes by which the decisions are implemented, benefits the people, benefit all the people and not some of the people. And it takes us back to that conversation in Nigeria to say, look, we shouldn't have a sense that only a particular group of persons are benefiting from a leader being in office, right? That the president, the governor, is governor for all. Whether you were voted for by a section of the people or by everybody, unanimously, you are still a governor of a particular state or the councillor of a particular location or even the chairperson of a particular local government. So in this context, good governance, as we talk about, as we speak about it, alludes to all activities and efforts to ensure that governance happens the way it should. And really, it's not just about the leadership. We also have the component of the followership. And this is what I'm excited to talk about this morning, to say that, look, this afternoon, to say that, look, how do we actually ensure that followers understand the role that they need to play? So this morning, again, I've had a very long day. I spoke with, one of the presidential candidates in the last election, one of the young people who ran for, elections. And, we got talking and he was explaining to me how frustrating the process is. That, look, the only reason he got into that space was to say, look, it is possible that young people come with ideas. And he was proud to say that, look, of all the ideas on the table, he feels very strongly that his ideas are the best. I've followed his writings, I've interacted with him at close range, and I know that, look, is for ideas, right? So that is something he has done in his own space to say that, look, I'm not even interested in, leadership per se, but is to say that how do we bring new thinking into that process? How do we ensure that all the activities, all the things that we're trying to do boils down to the fact that at the end of the day, governance happens the way it should. So really, we shouldn't have a concept of good governance. What if we should just have is governance, if we're sure that governance will translate to good governance? So it sounds like some repetition, some tautology to say that we are having good governance, because governance really should be good if it benefits the people. But we have seen again and again, across several, locations, across countries from history, that it is possible to actually have governance. And then at the end of the day, the governance does not benefit the people. And then the people will now have to begin to engage with the leaders to say, how do we move from that point to where governance will benefit us? So this is the foundation, let's move on to the next slide. It's a term used in international development. We talk about how public institutions conduct their public affairs, how they manage public resources, because again, when we say that the project is dedicated and then you see a governor come around to actually cut the tapes, the real point really, which I'm hoping to see at some point, is to say, look, let us bring here a key beneficiary of this project. So I want to see a day, for example, in Nigeria, where a major road that is plied by several of the members of Makomoran, where you have the bike riders, plied by members of the NURTW, and then we bring one of the major drivers that is known on that road and say, look, you come and cut this tape because this road has now been fixed and you are one of the representative of the biggest users of this road. So not the usual thing that we see where, projects are done and then the only person you see is the governor. Even the commissioners do not even commission projects. So the governor built a 30-bed hospital somewhere, and then you see the governor, look, this is a project that should be done at even the local government level, because what happens is that we have put public resources in your care. Okay, so the concept of good governance often emerges as a model to compare ineffective economies, just like I said earlier on, that we are beginning to say that, look, it looks like there is a good governance somewhere. And maybe at some point we'll even start talking about the best form of governance, right? We'll be talking about best governance. We'll be talking about economies that are the best, because we have seen several examples that, look, a country can go from being, bad in terms of governance to being good in terms of governance. So it's about the responsibility of government and governing bodies to meet the needs of the masses. And so that's why we always say that, look, it is not, we shouldn't have anything that is top secret in government, right? As opposed to select groups in society. And that's why you have agitation, for example, groups saying that even when we had seemingly the worst form of government, that's the military government, we didn't have any group trying to clamp down anybody's account, right? That you have a right to protest. What we should have a conversation on is, when protesting, what should happen during protest or what should not happen, during protest. But the real point is that, the responsibility of government and governing bodies to meet the need of the masses as opposed to select groups in society. No one in any sane environment or any ideal environment should feel that this government is not for me. There are other theories to this. People will say that, look, even if the government is not for you, let this person do what he thinks works for his people, right? And then hopefully when another person comes in, that person also, gets to do what works for the people. When we started having conversations about, having youth in leadership, it stemmed from the fact that several people began to feel that, look, maybe if we have young people in leadership, young people will begin to attract benefit for young people, right? But again, one of the possible errors from this is that, so the day we begin to have a youth president, so maybe, for example, several of the policies, engagement of government will begin to, tilt towards, youth programming, and then we begin to forget about the elderly. I remember, was it one of the prime ministers in Japan or one of the politicians in Japan contesting for election, who made a very derogatory remark about, the elderly, and said that, look, maybe they should actually go and die, right? And then it became a major issue. Japan has a lot of, old people, geriatrics, in the country. But again, it means that if you have to be president of a country like Japan, you need to factor in what will benefit those elderly. You need to begin to have plans about, do you want to have an elderly people's home? How do you take care of this elderly? How do you ensure that there are resources to ensure that they enjoy, the twilight of their year? So it's about ensuring that whether you're youth, whether you're black, whether you're whatever it is, whether you are Yoruba, whether you are Hausa, whether you are Fulani, you can ensure that everybody across every divide ultimately understands that you are there for them. So whatever program you are putting in place, nobody should feel alienated. And this is the entire premise on which good governance stands. That look, public resources are actually existing to actually benefit everyone. So I'll move on to talk about the space. So the conversation is, how do we align this to digital space? How do we begin to use digital tools? How do we begin to use digital technology to benefit the space? So the entire so I'm using NSAS as some form of case point. So you see me going back and forth around this for several reasons, because again we have seen that it is possible to actually agitate and get young people in Nigeria to get things going. We have seen that it is possible that young people can actually come together, organize themselves together, and take a particular space or channel their grievances across. And one of the tools we have seen used heavily for this is the tech space. We have seen the online space. So this slide is about saying, look, how big is the online space? So data available says that it will take you to about 23 million years to browse the entire internet, right? To browse the entire internet, that you want to check all the videos, all the podcasts, or whatever it is that is available. It will take any person 23 million years to do that. If you choose to read, it will take you about 11 million years that you want to read, which means that you're not even talking about videos. You're not watching videos. You're not listening to podcasts. You're not eating, and that's the only thing you do, right? It will take you 11 million years to do this. If you're a Nigerian, your average life expectancy, by the way, is not even up to 70. So what it means is that this is almost an impossible feat. But the point here is that to let us understand how massive the space is. So there are about 40 trillion gigabytes of data online, right? So a gigabyte, you know what a gigabyte means, you know what 1 trillion is. So 1 trillion of a gigabyte, right? So we're talking about 40 trillion of these available online. So it means that as far as that space is concerned, there is so much that we have going, right? There is so much in terms of volume. There is so much in terms of opportunities. There is so much in terms of materials. There is so much in terms of learning that is actually available in that particular space. So that's basically how big that particular space is, and it means that there's something we can actually learn from that space. There is something that we can actually take away, from that space at the end of the day. Are we following? Maybe
Yes, yes, we are following. Everybody is
oh,
muted.
okay. Okay, so I have a picture of a 3310, Nokia phone. Interestingly, I have this phone at the moment, which I also use. I have one of my SIMs in the phone, and it's big deal. So anytime I have to bring this out and people see, they're like, "Where did you get this phone from?" But again, it reminds us of how things started. In this period, there was nothing like Zoom, Zoom call like we have it now. Things like this could not happen. What we just could do then was to send text messages, very brief text messages, make some phone calls, receive some phone calls, and then we move on, right? But now I have a slide that says even wives. So someone had tweeted and said, my G at Clever kindly needs a girlfriend urgently. This nigga plays too much, but this one time is serious. Apply within. So it has gotten so progressive that people even go to look for wives, right? Online. I hope I'm not putting ideas into someone's head, right? So that's how far people have gone. This guy goes ahead to say he must be a bit tall with nice legs, dark skin, not too round, but slim face, speaks English fluently, a bit corporate, a bit of the corporate kind of lady, age 21 to 24, or, above all. I'm sure that the next line is that she must be God-fearing. That's what we always say. So this much actually happens on that space, and it's that same space that people have been able to organize to bring about, what, where the conversation we're having today about good governance. So let me also shock you to say that, it is also possible that even after one has passed on, one can actually tweet. So this allows you to be creative and literally extend your personality you had while even alive. So there's a platform called Dead Social. I stumbled on this in the course of a research. And this platform basically allows you to set up tweets. So if, for example, someone has a terminal ailment, there's a way this platform works. You can set it up. And then what needs to happen is that you give one of your closest friends just an access, and then the person just needs to tick and say that, look, this person is no longer alive. And then all the tweets that you have programmed. So if you wanted a tweet on February 14th, Valentine's Day, the tweet comes up. If your birthday is on July 10th, you wanted a tweet, for example, the tweet comes up. Okay, so even people can tweet after life. So if you can use several of these platforms for even things like this, tweet after live and all of that, how much more when one is actually around. So for a quick fact, there are about 97 million internet users. I know the figure is growing. According to the NCC, Nigerian Communication Commission, internet penetration is a bit, on the average in Nigeria. Almost every household in Nigeria has a phone. Every household in Nigeria has a radio rather, but only 8 out of 10 actually have mobile phones. 80% of Nigerians access online information on their mobile phones. Now, what does this information mean? It means that if we have to begin to engage on the subject of good governance, online, right, you need to factor in the fact that several people will not use this on their tablets. They will not do this on their laptops because they don't even have one, but they will be able to access information online, right? They'll be able to use their mobile phone. So it means whatever it is you are designing, a training program, a course, an online protest, you're trying to get people to sign, a petition to a particular section of government or whatever it is, you need to be sure that it can be done on the phone, okay? And then the average time spent online on a daily basis, right, is 4 hours. The average person spends, at least 4 hours on their mobile phone on a daily basis. That's basically what they do, right? And so the next question to ask is, what do they do online? So if they spend at least 4 hours on their mobile phone, the real question is, what do they do online? And then if I ask, several of us here, I'm sure that one of the things we do online is to chat. We had to engage someone recently in the office. Didn't sound like the guy spoke, a lot of English. But we found out that almost every minute when he needed to pass across an information, he would take his phone very close to his mouth, right, and do an audio file. He will say what he needs to say, put it in there, and then send. And communication has happened, right? So whether he's having a business kind of communication with his friends, or or business colleagues, or whatever it is, or he's hanging out, one of the things we see, you can move on to the next slide. One of the things we see is that people come in here to actually hang out, right? What do they do there as well? What are they searching for? Is there a particular reason why they reference certain things? Is there a particular person they refer, they reference? Is there a particular person they have to refer to? Is there a particular reason why they go online? So more recently, I noticed that, we're beginning to have people give out their videos, right, online. So people go and shoot a whole video, maybe about a 2 or 3 hours video. And then eventually after they are done, they come and distribute that video online. Why are they doing that? Because YouTube now has a platform that allows them to earn from even viewing that video. So there's a little, so that's why the conversation about piracy and all of that is no longer as attractive as it used to be. So people go online to hang out. What do they do there? They have, a lot of conversations about, to entertain themselves. Sometimes they want to know what is happening, right? Oh, what did they say is happening in Oyo State? Oh, there's a killing happening in Shasha. A market has been burnt. They go there to pick information, right? And then they go there to also get educated. Oh, why is there a third mainland bridge only in Lagos? If I want to find that out, I go online, I lock that in the Google space, and then I begin to research. Or I follow a particular person, and then I begin to say that what's happening with this person. A friend of mine, an old friend of mine, we parted, a senior friend of sorts. We parted ways, and then he said that since then, what it does is that if he needs to find out how I'm faring, he just goes online and then he Googles my name, right? So he Googles my name, and then, I had an incident recently, and then he had to call and said that, look, I just Googled your name randomly the way I usually would. And then this was what I found out. So people also go online because of a particular person. They follow that page, and then people go as far as setting up notifications on the page. And so that's why you have people say, oh, subscribe, set up notifications, so that anytime the person coughs online, you will be one of the first set of people to even get that information. I'll move on to talk about, this platform. So we've talked about, the concept of good governance. I've explained to us why these platforms are important. So for example, I've talked about the fact that even after life, people can actually get on and begin to engage on these platforms. I've also explained to us that, look, this is a platform where several of the conversations happen, and then the reason why people go on these platforms, right? To get entertained, to get information, and to also get education. So what are exactly are these platforms? So globally, the screen you are seeing, right there is basically what we have. This was updated in January 2020 by Hootsuite. So globally, one of the most used platforms is actually Facebook. And the reason why you have about, I think about 2.4 billion persons using Facebook at the moment is because China, that has, the biggest population in the world, is not allowing platforms like Facebook operating there, right? And then you have several of the rural communities where we have digital have-nots. Unfortunately, the language of the internet is English, and of course several other dominant language. You have French, you have Arabic, you have Portuguese, you have Spanish and all of that. So you need literacy to be able to link up with information online. And that's why sometimes the combination of saying we want to enhance good governance using technology tools has its own limitation, because we will alienate a few persons. So I'm speaking in English. My slides are in English, right? The materials and resources I am also referencing are also in English language. So it means that if we take this into a rural community, even in Bauchi, right? And even if I speak, in the Hausa language, for example, to do this presentation, there is that possibility that there will be a limitation of how the people, in rural communities in Bauchi State who have never been to the four walls of a school will actually absorb this information, right? But what we see very clearly is that you have platforms like Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, WeChat, Instagram dominating. And if you look at all of these, so you have Weibo. So Weibo is what you actually have operational, in China. You have Twitter. So if you look at this, it means that if I am trying to reach the average person in Nigeria, I don't want to take the conversation to Twitter, right? I want to stay if I'm trying to reach the average person across the world, rather, I don't want to take that conversation to Twitter alone. I want to stay on Facebook as well. I want to make YouTube videos. I want to make sure that I have that content being shared on WhatsApp, right? That's the way to go. So if this is it for the global space, if you move on to the next slide, you'll see what's happening in Nigeria. So let's come down to Nigeria. What exactly do we have in Nigeria, right? So you have a lot in terms of mobile phone connection. So out of a population of 203 million, as of January now, the earlier data I shared was as of 2019. So as of January 2020, you have about 203 million people in Nigeria in terms of population. And about 50% of this population are in the urban space, right? So they're in the capital there, in Bauchi, they're in the capital there in Gombe, they're in the capital of, Adamawa, they're in Lagos, they're in Port Harcourt, they're in Ibadan, the capital cities. But we have 169 million persons that have mobile phones. So it means that we are having a lot in terms of telephony in the rural location. So there's a lot of progress that has been made in that regard. So the same way you have your information on the mobile phone, on the radio, that a lot of people are picking up information on radio, a lot of people too are now reachable on their what? On their mobile phones, right? So which means that they can communicate on their mobile phone in the language that they want to actually communicate. Again, you also have internet users. And so this is where we are beginning to have several of the challenges. So of this population of about 200 million persons, and almost about 3/4 of this population, that's 83%, already having mobile phones, only 83 million have what? Internet penetration access. So about 42% of Nigerians can have access to the internet. Again, COVID-19 has also altered this narrative, helped us to actually ensure several of our mobile communication companies can begin to see why they need to make data available, because a lot of things are actually happening on those platforms. So this session, for example, will have happened physically, but for COVID-19, and then we're trying to make the best of technology in terms of what is available on Zoom. On Zoom here. And then you have active social media users. Internet availability is different, right? From actively using social media. So if we use whatever it is on social media, we are saying in Nigeria, you can only reach 27 million persons. That is 13% of the population. And so you see that earlier mentioned that we need to find ways through which our technology can also match what happens on the streets, right? So we now need to find foot soldiers who can take a session like this that is happening on social media. And that's why we have several of you on the platform. You can take this information, for instance, and begin to distill and say, oh, what aspect of this is relevant to part one students on my campus? What aspect of this is relevant for people living in Zangotama, for example, in Kaduna State? What aspect of this is relevant to that grandmother or to that youth who can only actually ride a bike alone? Okay, so that's in part what this means. But this gives us an overview of what we have, so that we also are not just wrapping our heads around the fact that, oh, once you're online, just take this online. Once you take it online, then that change can happen. We need to do more than that, right? We need to ensure that everybody on the street, everybody in the corner actually can take information around governance and then begin to run with it in their own little space. Now move on again to now begin to specifically talk about how this works, here in Nigeria. How long? So we have something called Alexa ranking. It tells us that, look, from some of the top 20 sites visited in Nigeria, people spend a lot of time on Google. So people go online, for example, to find out things. So someone possibly would have Googled things like, what's happening in Shasha Market in your state. Why are Fulani, persons being labeled, as terrorists, right? People will go online, like we saw the other person who went even online to put on Twitter to say that, look, I'm looking for a wife. So people put a lot of their queries online. So the average person spends at least about 16 minutes on Google. And then people, because again, they want things easy, also go on YouTube to begin to look for YouTube videos. So they want videos, for example, that in a short while, it can explain what is happening. So if I have any problem, I want to solve the problem. I can't remember what was it we were trying to solve recently, and we said we're going to, okay, so our roll-up banner, we're on the field, our roll-up banner packed up or something, had an issue. And quickly, my colleagues went on YouTube to go and see how to fix a roll-up banner. Right, a roller banner is that thing that that banner that you can move around. You just draw up and you can see it. You can put it as a signpost of sorts wherever it is you are. So people spend about 8 minutes, on YouTube looking for different videos, on the average, trying to see what works. Facebook, they spend about 11 minutes. Instagram, 5 minutes. Twitter, 6 minutes. Jam.org.ng, especially when Jam exam is happening, they spend about 13 minutes. And then Nairaland again, you also have people spending about 12 minutes on Nairaland. Now, I took time to also look at, since we're saying that Facebook happens to be one of those most patronized platforms, I took time to also check very clearly how many people across some of these states are on Facebook. So Borno State, for example, has about 300,000 persons on Facebook. Kaduna has 900,000 persons. So which means that despite the population of Kaduna State, if I put any information on Facebook, for example, the maximum number of persons that can see it is 900,000, right? You can move on to the next slide. The maximum number of persons that I can see what is happening in Yobe is about 100,000. The maximum number of people that can see what is happening in Gombe is about 150,000. In Kano too, I have just about 900,000. And that's why I'm saying that when we talk about good governance, we need to make sure that every aspect of governance functions properly. So because of the literacy rate, and you can put this at the literacy rate of some of these locations. What's the literacy rate in Kano, for example? What's the literacy rate in Kaduna, for example? What's the literacy rate in places like Bauchi, for example? So it means that states with lower literacy rate, for example, we have lesser number of people on those platforms because social media platforms, technology becomes a luxury to them and not necessarily, a necessity, not necessarily a tool that they can actually use to work. So look at the FCT, the Federal Capital Territory, despite its very lean population, suddenly has about 2 million persons on Facebook, right? So this tells you again that, because it's the FCT and then you have a lot of, business happening there, a lot of government engagement happening there, you have upward of about 2 million people on that platform, right? On Facebook engaging from the FCT. Okay. I'll move on to the next slide, and then I'll talk about the tools. I'll talk about the tools that we can actually use on this platforms. I'll still come back to talk to us about the top visited sites. But again, I just thought that I should lay this foundation so that we understand some of these tools that are used. So again, I've talked about YouTube, and for the purpose of this session, the idea is to tell you and say that, look, these are some of the tools that you can use. So there's a tool called Google Trend. So if you don't know what Google Trend is, what you need to do after this session is to go on your YouTube. So I'm going to leave this as an assignment for us. Go on YouTube and go and type in how to use Google Trend. So you see several videos that will come up, and then it will be able to show you that, look, this is one of the things you can do on Google Trend, right? So what do you do on Google Trend? Google Trend basically helps you understand that, look, this is an issue, and this is a trend concerning an issue. So if, for example, I go and type, what can I type on Google Trend? If I go and type Bauchi State on Google Trend will show me what everybody else is trying to find out about Bauchi State. Maybe people are finding resort in Bauchi State. Maybe people are trying to find out cost of accommodation in Bauchi State. And it will tell me where these people are even searching from in Nigeria. The people making this search in Bauchi State, are they trying to find out about tourism in Bauchi State from Abuja? Are they trying to find out about tourism in Bauchi State from Lagos? So it will tell me that, oh, maybe there's a group of persons in Lagos State that are trying to visit Bauchi State for tourism, right? So if I type something as simple as yellow fever, right? And then, I can begin to see, oh, where is the conversation about yellow fever happening in Bauchi State? If I type local solution if I type COVID-19, and then it will show me that, and then I can say, I only want to see for Nigeria. I only want to see for these two states in Africa, these two countries in Africa. I only want to see for the global space. I want to see what is happening worldwide. So Google Trend allows you to see the trend of a particular subject across different places in the world. There's another tool called Google Alerts. What Google Alerts, allows you to do is to set up an alert. So I have an alert, for example, on my name. So if any newspaper reports anything about me, if any story comes up about me, or if after this session, for example, Leadtots goes ahead to release a press release and says, Shola Fagosi facilitated a session on, using technology to promote good governance, and it's part of a story. By the second day, I would see it, depending on, the websites, depending on, the Alexa ranking of the site. Thanks a lot, Sheon. So that is what Google Alert looks like, right? So I can set up a Google Alert on my name and then go and click on Create Alerts, right? I put my email address. So you can put your email address there and you say Create Alerts. So go to Show Options. Go to that Show Options there. So you show options. So how do you want it to happen? Do you want to receive the alert as it happens at more, or you just want to have it once a day? So whatever subject that you are trying to be a specialist in, right? So if, for example, I am interested in conversation about, about mining in Nigeria. I'm interested in, gold mining in Nigeria. So there's a lot of illegal gold mining happening in Zamfara, or happening in places like Malaysia, in Osun State. So I want to become a thought leader around the subject of, extraction, the extraction industry in Nigeria. So I can go and set up an alert on extraction, right? I pick the keyword in that industry, I set up an alert, and then I instruct Google to actually deliver those alerts into my email. Another one has to do with email hunter. If I want to engage with an institution of government that is registered, they have their own, website. So for example, www.leadtots.org, for example, and I've been trying to engage with this institution for a while, or this agency for a while. What I can do is to go to email hunter, and then I will type the domain of that organization. Maybe I've been trying to find an email of someone there. It's not been possible. I'll type the domain of that organization, and then it will give me email addresses that are listed with that organization. There's something else called web analysis. If you have a website of your own, it can tell you, for example, and say that, look, when people actually come to your website, this is where they are coming to. So if you are part of a student union government, for example, and your union has been able to set up a website, maybe you're asking undergraduate students to register for tutorials, you're asking them to register if they want to be part of a field trip, you'll be able to tell with the website analytics that this is where a lot of people are going to. So people are interested in the tutorial more than the field trip. People are interested in the field trip more than the tutorial. The other one has to do with hashtags. So hashtag is also another way to harvest a lot of content. Facebook has a space there where you can search, where you go to search for people's name. One other thing you can also do is to search for, a hashtag. So when you get to platforms like people who run a lot of news story, I'm sure several of us know Linda Ikeji. So my very strong guess is that Linda Ikeji has hashtags or some keywords. So you see her report a lot of stories about deaths. This person was butchered. So if anybody is going to report any story about a lover killing another person, for example, the keyword will be killed. So all she needs to do is to put in the word killed on the, use the hashtag killed, and then type in the hashtag. And what happens is that all the conversations around killed on Facebook would come to her. So somebody in Bayelsa wrote about, oh, a boy just killed his girlfriend overnight, or the word died, right? So that conversation will come to her, and then she can take that information and make it into news. Another area that we can begin to use for governance, analysis and conversation is the comment analysis. So Mr. Macaroni, right? Debo, right, was one of the people who went to Lekki toll gates over the weekend. And if you see the video he shared afterwards, anywhere you see that video, remember that this guy did not just fall in space. He has relatives, he had friends when he was an undergraduate at I think Redeemers University or so. If you go to the comment section, for example, you would have people now having different kinds of conversation. So when you go to a site like Punch newspaper, for example, or any major platform, you go to a Sahara Reporters, and then you are beginning to see, a news story. Go to the comment section. If you go to Daily Trust, for example, when they post out a news story online, go to the comment section, and then you can begin to read different thoughts. You can see different kinds of people who will tell you what is even happening, and it's not even in the news, right? Several things actually happen in Nigeria that never finds its way to the news. You guys know several things happening in Adamawa, in Bauchi, in Gombe, in Abuja that will never find its way into the news. And one of the things you can even make, a specialty around is taking that kind of information, and then you can even start a platform of the news outside of the news, right? The news that never gets reported, right? And that's the concept of community journalism. That's the concept of community citizens journalism now. That what we know your own platform for is that, oh, if you go to this guy's Twitter platform, you'll be hearing about things that are happening. If you go to this guy's, Instagram platform, you'll be seeing things that are happening on this guy's, platform that never gets reported. They would not know that all you have done is to harness, tools like this for the purpose of good governance. And then you can begin to even tag, several of your House of Rep member, several of the House of Assembly member, which is something else again, to say that, look, who is the guy representing us as chairman of the local government? And then you can go there to just make a simple request and say, Mr. Chairman, you cannot exist in this local government and say you don't have a Facebook page. We need to know what you are doing. Update us on a weekly basis so that you can also harvest comments from us. As simple as that, that is a project on its own, right? And then Google itself, of course. With Google, you can get news. So one of the things that people don't do a lot on Google, Shane, if you can go on google.com there, you can push up the screen. My apologies, I'm not able to use my screen. Apparently, I didn't notice that my screen has two different windows. So apparently, the Zoom is on a different window. My presentation is in another window. So that's why I said, let's just get on so that we don't waste time on that. So go to google.com. Let me show us something very quickly. Go to the website www.google.com. Are we following? Can you type yes in the chat room? If you are following, just type in yes, I'm following. Just type in yes, I'm following. So I know that we're all listening. Oh, great. I can see Comrade Ibrahim Ahmed Sanari. I can see Sulaiman. I can hear Patience. Oh, great. Fatima, Grace, Mustafa, Edmond, great. All right, Beatrice, Sarah, fantastic. All right. I'm glad to know that we are following. Can you go to google.com, Sheung, or whoever is at the back end there?
Okay, I'm there.
Okay. You need to share your screen. I can. It's
Okay.
the presentation that I'm still seeing. Yes. Can I get water? Okay. So type in anything. Type in maybe Oyo State. Type in Oyo State. Since that's what is in the news now. Type in Oyo State. Okay, great. So you see. Okay. So because it's a major news, you have the top. So okay. So let's type in Bauchi. Type in Bauchi. Okay, okay, I'm seeing top stories. There's something else I want to show us. Let's type in governance. Type in governance. Okay, awesome. So you have dictionary definition. So now go to that section. Most times when we use Google, one of the things that most of us do is that we just stay here where you have all, and then scroll down. Let's see. Scroll down. Let's see. Keep scrolling down, and then you have all of these Wikipedia and all of that. So this is where most of us actually stay. But go back up there. Let me show us something. Right. So if I wanted to find out who is having a conversation around governance here, I'll go and click on news. Yes. So if you click on news, for example, can you see now? So we are beginning to see there's a bad smell to Japan's corporate governance reform. Keep scrolling down. I can see it's good governance a necessary precursor to peace. Now, this is from the UNDP. And so most times when I want to have a conversation, I want to have a presentation, I come in here first and foremost to see some of the contemporary conversations. By that, I mean that what are the recent conversations about this? Let's type in, what other thing can we type in? Let's type in peace. Type in the word peace. Yes, type in the word peace. Right, so you can see northern killing. So you can see this is what the news basically is. So if you go back to all now, so you can see the various news around this. You can even see the Vatican City. Keep going down. You can see the Vatican City say Holy See urges peace, social justice in Myanmar. So it's not just about Nigeria, right? Cleric urges churches to pray for peace. Look at Voice of America report. 2018 peace deal was not a fix for South Sudan. So if I want to have a global conversation about the subject of peace, so I have examples in South Sudan, I have examples in Myanmar as well, based on what is contemporary. So I want to encourage us as well not to just stay with what Google gives you, because Google algorithm works based on what is available in terms of what somebody has fixed on that platform. In terms of what someone has done very well in terms of how the platform basically works. But the news platform allows you to see what is contemporary, like what is the most recent thing or conversation around this. And then if you go back to the top there as well, you can see books, you can see images, you can see, you can even avail yourself of opportunities for seeing video as well. Thanks a lot, Shion. So that's one of the things you can actually do with Google. So it's not just just searching and then moving on. So when you're doing even your academic assignments, you want to put together an article to talk about this kind of injustice on your campus. Don't just limit yourself to this, right? Lack of water on campuses. Do you want to check and see if maybe there's also lack of water on other campuses, and then that it's not just our own campus. What's the solution? How did they solve the problem on another campus as well? How did they solve the problem of transportation, local transportation on a campus, right? That, the problem we have with several of the transport drivers, they don't like getting to this hall. How was this kind of problem solved in other places? So you can begin to draw from some of those examples. And then the same thing, just I mentioned for Facebook, you also can use the same hashtag also on Twitter. Same thing also on YouTube video. There's a YouTube video for everything, right? How to toast a girl, how to write a letter, how to write a powerful letter, right? You can do that. You don't know how to use emails, how to set up an email, how to send email. Whatever it is, you can do a video on how to actually find out how to do those things. You want to go and pay an advocacy visit to maybe even the registrar of a university, right? How to set up an advocacy meeting. What are the things you need to do when you get there? You need an advocacy pack. How do you write an advocacy pack? So the YouTube video, for example, allows you to see firsthand, right? Without just listening or just reading, allows you to see a video of how this happens. So for technology, what are the hard tools you need? You can move on to the next slide. Again, I've talked about the fact that almost about 83% of persons actually use these things on their mobile phone. A mobile phone, internet connection, and then there are certain major lifting or hard things you want to do. And then you need to actually use your laptop. And of course, in all of these, you have to consider using your battery, right? You need to consider using a battery life. If you are going to be protesting on a place, let's say, all students, we want to go and we've tried to engage with university authorities. We're not making progress here. We think our vice chancellor also goes online a lot. I know the vice chancellor of the University of Ibadan, his Facebook page used to be very busy. So if you wanted to get anything across to him, go and put it in the comment section on his Facebook page. The former vice chancellor of the University of Ibadan. So you need to know what works in your environment, right? And then you can begin to now put a lot of strategy to these ensure, you can move on to the next slide. You can put a lot of strategy to this to make sure that, you use the appropriate channel that this person actually uses. Or if all of us are saying that, oh, we want to take a walk. I remember a colleague of mine who said when they were on campus, he was a journalist on campus, and then they did not allow them actually, whether have a day or something. There was a day they wanted to commemorate, and then the campus said no. So what they did in terms of strategy was that they decided that all of them were going to wear black, and then they were all going to put a paper tape on their lips. So they had a paper tape on their lips, right? And then all of them wore black. So they started walking around campus, and then everybody started asking on campus that who died, who killed who, because usually when people do things like that, they will wear black, and then okay, so they did a candlelight procession as well. So they had candles with them. And everybody started asking questions, and they said that, oh, they are student journalists, they had a program, and then the university said that they could not have the program on campus. And they drew a lot of attention to that, right? So that was the age before, the internet came, right? So in the age of technology now, if they were going to do things like that, they will put together a team of maybe 5 persons who will join that procession. But what those guys will be doing with what? Tweeting about it, putting content on Facebook, tagging the necessary media houses. So which means that they will have done their research to say, oh, what are the local media houses, for example, we need to tag here? Is there a former vice chancellor who is always very sympathetic to student courses? Is there a lecturer who they know that this guy or this woman always has the ears of students? And you begin to tag people like that. But you need to be creative, right? And that's why, several of those things around the NSAS protest became a concern, because what was missing in my own analysis, and several other, readings I've also seen, was that there was no thought that a risk analysis was necessary, right? What would have been the risk analysis to say that, oh, when area boys, for example, want to hijack this protest? So imagine if during that protest, for example, everybody who was coming to the protest ground had a particular, maybe a shirt or a cap that they were wearing that was, particular for that cause. So anybody who was doing any other thing without wearing that cap, we know very clearly that this person was not for us. Would it have been out of place, for example, also to also begin to say, look, let us also mark, a security agency. We want to work with a private security agency who will give us, their private security guards, and then they would man these locations for us to be sure that hoodlums do not come over, to actually hijack that thing. But the only reason we're able to say at the end of the day that hoodlums were the ones who did what happened was because there were several video evidences, right? There were people who were taking pictures, there were people who were taking videos, and that tells us again about how important, several of these tools are. Several of the policemen that have been sacked, in different locations because they did something untoward was because somebody was confident enough, somebody was bold enough to actually use the mobile phone to actually capture what was going down in those locations. Okay, the next slide. In doing all of this, what would this online engagement cost you? How expensive is it? You need time, right? You need time. Sometimes you need financial resources. By this, you need trainings. You need to have the information just the same way you are doing now. You need to know what works in a particular place. Maybe you want to a mobile phone that can do that. You need a mobile phone that can do that. I just had to get a tripod, yesterday. So we're supposed to do a project in a location. And I know that, we can't afford bringing in our media team to that location. So I needed them to run me through, look, what can I do with my mobile phone here, right? Oh, you can use a tripod. There's a lens that you can buy an external lens to your phone and all of that. So you might need just a little financial resources to do this. And then you need efforts, right? It's a lot of work, right? To put things online together. It's not as simple as it looks like. It's a lot of work. You need a strategy. How are we going to go about it? You don't just say that when we get there, we'll start tweeting. No, that's not a strategy. Right? We'll start putting it on, we'll put it on WhatsApp. No, that's not a strategy. Are you going to design a DP first and foremost to inform people that we are going here? Right? After we do that, are we going to do a video? When we do the video, are we going to interview people, for example? When we go into this community, why not let's interview about 3 or 4 persons? So a road in your a particular community is bad, and you want to draw attention to maybe, the House of Reps member. So why not interview about 4 or 5 drivers who have used that road? And then the driver can say, look at I'm just coming back from the mechanic's place. This is it. This is what has happened. And then you can also interview maybe a woman who plies that road, for example. That's a strategy, right? So that comes with a lot of effort. And more recently, again, you also need to advertise. So if you think that your reach may not be able to go. So that's why, for example, if I'm planning a program in Ibadan, I can target that I want people from Bauchi to apply for this. And then I target the small crowd in Bauchi. I can target people in Benue State and say that, oh, these are the people that I want to apply for this particular opening. And one of the things I should also mention, move on to the next slide, is that There are a lot of professions in the digital space. And one of the things you try to do as a young person is to know bits and pieces of all of this. We have the SEO manager, you have someone who can manage projects, who will say, oh, because we're doing this, let's put everybody on a WhatsApp group. Okay, everybody who is part of this on a WhatsApp group, everybody who is part of this unit, the media unit, create another sub WhatsApp group for them, right? Everybody who is going to be writing content for us, who is going to be drafting the tweet for us. Not all of us are good writers. Create another group for them. So when they write, somebody is there editing and then can send into the general group. So you can see a lot of organization. Somebody else will analyze and say that, oh, how many messages did you send? Oh, we were able to do 500 messages. How many people were reached? We were able to reach 200,000 people. Oh, fantastic. That means we have made progress because our target was to actually reach 100,000 persons, but now we are actually listed out here are some of the skills that you might want to begin to look out for, and say that as a young person who is interested in what is possible in terms of the marriage between technology and good governance, you can begin to take skills around this. We have the SCM manager, we have the SEO manager. The search engine, optimization manager is a person who ensures that when you type something on Google, for example, you can find answers, right, on page 1 of Google. That's what the SEO manager does. So that's why Google, for example, will serve you a content that has video, that has audio, that has picture, and then that has text. So Google is in the business of bringing you the best of content. That's what they do. So anybody who puts a content online and say challenges of young people in Bauchi, and then the person writes certain things and then also shows a number of videos of young people complaining about the problem in Bauchi. Oh, there are little or no job opportunities in Bauchi. Most of the job opportunities here are government related work, and if only it's only government that can actually employ in Bauchi. Oh, and yet there's a lot of opportunities here. And then there are pictures to show that, look, light is available in Bauchi 18 hours out of 24 hours. So which means that in your own small space, you're already helping people who are going to want to make a decision about moving to Bauchi for whatever it is that will invariably impact on governance. And remember that when we talk about the issue of good governance, it's not just about a politician being in office. That's not what good governance is about. We're talking about the economic dynamics as well of that particular society, right? We're talking about, the livelihoods in that particular location. So there are states in Nigeria, for example, that you will never find young people who have technology skills. Young people who have technology skills rather migrate to places like Lagos.
Mr. Shirley, the time, sorry, I have to stop you now. Can you take the next 3 minutes to just round up?
To just round up. Okay, let me do that very quickly.
Okay. We're enjoying the session, but the second facilitator is with. Maybe you continue after the second facilitation since you're still coming back.
Oh, okay. So I can move this, to having in the second facilitator, and then I can conclude on this. Just a few more slides, and I'll be done. Thank you everyone for your time. So if there are questions, you can drop them, and then I can take on the questions, much later. Thank you so much, Seun.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shola. It's nice having you. Thank you. It was a powerful presentation.